All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, part of the Blue Wire Network. I'm your host, Patrick Moran. Thank you for locking in, whether you're watching this on video, whether you're listening to this on audio. I appreciate you all. Most of you are listening to this and not watching. And let me unpack a couple things, and then we'll get into today's show. A lot to unpack, actually. Starting today with this episode, Talking Buffalo is now weekdays, every day, Monday through Friday during the week. On Monday, I'll be joined by my guest, who I'll introduce to you in just a second here. Tuesdays is going to be a rotation of recurring guests, mainly Joe Yurden and PK from Buffalo Sports Collective. Then on our Wednesday show, mainly either Aaron Quinn or Anthony Marino from Buffalo Rumblings will be on. Thursdays is going to be a solo show, interactive, with fans who send in questions and comments, polls, all kinds of fun stuff like that. And then Friday will be my variety show, where sometimes I'll still be live from Imperial Pizza. Other times we'll do interviews remotely, or maybe I might have someone in their studio with me, but that'll be a different guest every week. As for today, joined in person, actually, for the first time. This is the first time we've actually done video here, Talking Buffalo, with someone else in studio. A longtime friend of mine, and I'll tell you what, if you say you're a fan of the show, and if you've been a fan of the show from day one, and I mean literally from day one, this is episode, I think, 617. Episode 1, very first episode ever. My man Tone Pucks was on with me. It was a Sal Capaccio interview, and then you did a segment afterwards. I don't know if you even remember that. By the way, if you're watching this, you could see, if you're listening, I'm joined by a good friend of mine who's going to be doing the show with me every Monday, taping on Sunday nights. Tone Pucks, what's going on, dude?
What's up, man? I don't think I had any idea that I was on the very first one.
You were?
Like, absolutely none whatsoever. What did we talk about?
I don't remember.
Come on,
I do
man.
know you were on. I know Sal Capaccio was my first guest. Did a good 50-minute interview with him, and we didn't even talk Bills. We talked about his life and his career. And then you were on afterwards. I'm sure we talked. Well, it was February. It was February 2018 when it launched. So we weren't talking about any NFL action for sure. Probably wrapping up something with Bills postseason. You're on the episode, the second one too, because I had Tim Graham on. He was episode 2. Then I had a writer on, some no-name writer. That was a bad episode right off the bat. And then number 4, I believe Tyler Dunn was one of the first guests too. But anyway, Tone was on with me when I first started this podcast when I was living in Florida. And then kind of, I don't know, life just happened. Long story short, it's been 3.5 years since you've been on this podcast. I looked it up. December 2019 was the last time you were on.
What? Oh, all right. What'd you say was the number as far as number of podcasts?
600. I think this is episode 617.
All right. I'm gonna say, when you first launched, man, I don't think, the betting line for your over under would have been much more than about 100. All right. If we got up to 6 something, you probably could have scored that at like, I don't know, man. You probably could have scored that exactly the way you could have scored the Bucks to win the South that I blew, which was plus 1,000. And yeah, man, I mean, it's congrats. All right, congrats. I throw around compliments like manhole covers, but 600 plus, and keeping it new, keeping it innovative, all that shit. I mean, one thing I've always said is it's so corny how people go on to a podcast and the first thing they do for the first 5 minutes is just compliment the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
I had no interest in being that guy. But yeah, good for you, man. Good for you.
Let me paint a little bit of a picture too for people who are watching and listening who don't know you, or maybe they weren't listening to the podcast from the very origin of it. We've known each other. Tone and I have known each other since, it just makes me feel so old saying it, but it is what it is. And since like the mid 80s, man. We've known each other. We grew up together on the west side of Buffalo. So on this episode on Mondays, I mean, today will be pretty much straightforward football talk because we just got a lot to get to being week 1. But you'll hear a lot of tales, a lot of stories from, us growing up together. A lot of ball busting.
There'll be some ribbon.
There will definitely be some ribbon. There'll be some ball busting. It'll be cool for people, I think, anyway, to just have two people talk, like I said, who just know each other as well as we do. I would definitely say, are we frenemies? Is that a fair term? I don't think we're enemies. We're rivals, Like we have rivalries with everything. I don't think enemies. So frenemies might not work, but
well, you kind of need the other person to, to be good at something, for a rivalry. And I think being that our athletic days are behind us, our rivalries these days, often center around the fantasy universe and your just your complete falling off in fantasy baseball.
Bad.
Has been epic, bro. I mean, it's a fall off.
It
is a fall off. Man.
It was fantasy baseball was frustrating this year. I finished dead last in the league too for the first time. We've been in the league together for 13 years. By the way, we've
so
each won.
Bad, bro. There
I
are some
won 3
really bad guys in that league to be finishing last.
It was bad. Well, you know what? As frustrating as it is to finish last, I take a little bit of comfort in you losing in the first round. So
I wasn't good enough. No, I wasn't, man.
3 years, or not 13 years we've been doing that league. To be fair, we each have won 3 championships. I just haven't won shit in a long time. I won like 3 of the first 4 years, but I've been irrelevant, quite honestly.
Well, I mean, that's the trade-off. That's the trade-off for the 6,000 podcasts or whatever you've done.
So on this show, like I said, we'll be talking Bills in the NFL, of course, but not just football, man. Plenty of Sabre stuff. We'll be talking about other sports. Tony does officiating, so I kind of like, whether I like it or not, there's going to be a lot of ref talk going on this show when I have you on. Like when we're breaking down games, I'm sure you're going to have some thoughts on the officiating at times. So we'll have plenty of sports talk. Like I said, some pop culture stuff. We'll have a regular segment or two. And then, like I said, just a bunch of stories from dudes who have known each other since the mid 80s. Before we do bust balls and get into stuff, though, I do want to say on a serious note, part of the reason, at least, it's you haven't been on the show in a long time for a lot of reasons. One of them, at least one of them anyway, also your general laziness or unmotivation to want to do the show with me. I've asked you for a million times.
Ton of that.
But on a serious note, you and your girlfriend were fostering 2 children and now legally adopted them. So I want to put it up there on the screen if you're watching. Tell us about the kids, man. These are 2 good looking kids. I got a chance to meet them at your adoption party a couple weeks ago.
Oh man, they're awesome, dude. They're awesome. You're right. I mean, they definitely have taken some free time away. I mean, I'm supposed to be, like free right now. My youngest, my former youngest is like 19 or 20 now. Wait, he ain't hit 20 yet. 20, that'll be kind of big for him. But yeah, like I was out of, I was out, man. And then, then I got back in, circumstances being what they were. And, I can't help myself, man. I'm super, just super drawn to kids, and their story is going to be an awesome story. It's awesome already, but it's just going to get awesomer. And it was cool to have you there. You drew the invite, and you hadn't met the kids a whole bunch, but you drew the invite because you always had a lot of interest in, some of the stories. And some of it was just, me complaining about how exhausted I am and how the fuck I ended up starting over at like 50 or some shit. But It was good to have you at the adoption party. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think that you were going to put quite the dent in the candy that you did, but like I got a Fat Bob spread going on and everything like that. And I look over and your ass is at the candy table, and
a dessert table,
like Costanza at a shrimp table, bro. I mean, you were just, going in on the candy. Well, it's just good. There ended up being enough for everybody, but yeah, man, sweet tooth, huh?
Yeah, dude, I'll tell you. So I went with our friend Scully, who I'm sure will be brought up on this podcast plenty in these episodes to come. And yeah, it was like a bunch of things that I never have anymore. I had to have, like, I ate about 1 million Swedish fish at that party. Like I said, a bunch of sweet treats. You did have Fat Bob's, which I honestly did not have one bite of.
None, bro.
I did have some. I had some Lenovo because you had Lenovo pizza there too, and then I had a couple.
And that was also for the kids, just by the way. the pie was just for the kids that didn't want to mess with.
And a couple of root beers, which I never have, like that pure sugar kind of root beer too. That shit was really good. Actually,
Johnny Ryan's, bro.
Yeah, that was really good.
Skipping
man.
Johnny Ryan's. What was funny though is you mentioned Scully. Is there? I got like Fat Bob's and Johnny Ryan's, like good ass pop, and he's a pop guy, right?
Mhm.
What's my man going after? A Lenova's pie and some Diet Coke. My man just, he stuck with what was familiar. He stuck with what was familiar, which I like. But you mentioned not having any of the Fat Bobs. Dude, we ended up with like way, way, way more than we bargained for as far as the food concerned. We actually had no idea that there were a whole nother platters underneath the table for round 2.
Oh, really?
And we brought so much home, man. I felt so gross last week. All I did was eat that leftover food, man, all week long. I mean, I was a mess.
Yeah.
A mess.
Like I said,
But good time, man. Good
No,
time.
it was a good time. And like I said, in all seriousness, before we bust any balls, congratulations, man. That's a really, really cool thing. I'm proud of you for that. And it'll be cool to see the boys come up and do some great things. And it'll be fun to watch you snap on them every now and then too, I'm sure. So
I know I'm gonna be the exact same. I'm gonna be the exact same way. I thought I would maybe tone down or something like that. But, it's athletically I'm speaking, but once they start playing some sports, man, I'm gonna be the exact same dude that I was with the first 3 very remedial athletes that I have.
All right, so we'll get into some Bills talk here in just a few minutes. Before that, like I said, we're taping this pretty late here in my home studio on a Sunday night, week 1 of the NFL. I feel like we're going around the league a little bit. I feel like we have to start with the Miami game. We just got done watching it less than an hour ago. I don't know, dude. That team is really good. I mean, their top players played like top players when it mattered most. We were talking a little bit. I mean, I don't know if you agree with this, but I said Tyreek Hill might be the best, certainly the most dangerous non-quarterback in the entire NFL. He just took that game over with his speed. And what he throw? 466 yards passing. Tyreek Hill, 11 catches for 215 yards, just unbelievable. And the Miami defense, who couldn't do anything, it seemed, for 58 minutes. And that last drive, when the Chargers had the ball and a chance to win the game, only down 2, the pass rush took over, and Phillips got home twice over the last 3 plays. I mean, obviously, from a Bills perspective, you're going to keep your eyes on Miami probably as much, if not more, than any other team around the league right now. I don't know. I was really impressed to go into LA week 1 and win and come from behind to win too. It's just got to give it up to Miami. I was just really impressed with them today.
Well, if you want some good Sunday football takes, all right, about the slate that just finished up, which is I guess when we'll be taping these. Let me just say, I am not your guy. Okay, I am probably likely to catch about 2 minutes of every football game that's out there. See the aforementioned 2 little kids, but
we watched that though.
We did. I got here in enough time to watch Miami. Believe me, man. I mean, I'm following it. All right. I just, as is the case, with baseball too, and a lot of sports, man. I mean, I've gotten away from sitting in front of the television and watching it, and I'm often following it online, and I get a fair enough feel for the way that the game went online. But I also, unless I take a look at the stats or something like that, like I can't tell you who may have blown it up passing today or
right.
something like that. And I'm certainly not, breaking down any film, but I have a thought or two, on the games and on the Miami game. Yeah, man. I mean, I had a feeling it was going to be a good one. I did, especially just by the law of averages, once, some of those afternoon ones that I was looking forward to ended up being clunkers. I felt like Miami and the Chargers, just again, law of averages wouldn't disappoint, and it didn't. And Hill was a freak. McDaniel has a second year now, with how to use them, and they got plays from their defense, when they needed it. They're going to be around, man. I mean, today they looked like they're going to be around.
And look, I know there are a lot of people who might disagree when I say Tyreek Hill is maybe the most dangerous non-quarterback. A lot of people say Jefferson from Minnesota is, and that's fair. But this guy's just a game changer, man. It always seems at the biggest moments. He flew behind J.C. Jackson, who's a good corner, for that one long touchdown. And it's just, like I said, their playmakers just made the plays. And again, Tua just played really. He had one bad interception, or an ugly pass, and there's times where he short arms the balls. I think consistency is going to be his issue at some point, but that offense is just lethal. And then the defense, which blows my mind how they're not how they didn't play better for 3.5 quarters, because you forgot they even had Bradley Chubb. You kind of mentioned that. They got some ballers on that defense, man. Holland didn't really do too much.
Two off the edge. I mean,
yeah,
Chubb and Phillips off the edge, man, and then Wilkins closing the pocket.
Yeah,
I mean that's big stuff up front, and they don't necessarily suck on the on the back end either.
Can you see? And again, people by the time they're watching or listening to this on Monday, they're probably already consumed their Monday morning, NFL review shows on like ESPN and NFL Network and stuff. I feel like
hate them all.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan either, man. I don't watch them much.
One of them.
I've talked about a lot on this show. I think a lot of these pregame or postgame shows have just become like hot take contests. Say whatever it is that a fan base, like especially like Buffalo, where it seems like Bills fans are sensitive to everything negative said about them. I think a lot of people out there just criticize the Bills for effect because they know it's going to result in clicks and watching the clips on Twitter and shit like that. So I feel like a lot of people do that intentionally to troll Bills fans. But anyway, I feel like Miami's going to be the talk of Monday morning around the league. And in fairness, to go on the road and beat the Chargers and have your quarterback who's coming off, a lot of questions with him with the head, going for 466 yards, and your money making wide receiver having over 200 yards. It's deserved. I have to give it up to them based on at least this game. They're 1-0, and it certainly looks like they're going to be a problem for the Bills this year. That's for damn sure, man.
Yeah, I think that's the angle. Certainly that what's tomorrow's game on ESPN? Bills.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, that's certainly the angle that's going to be talked up tomorrow when you've got two
tonight.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Two East contenders and the Bills and the Jets going at it, and you got the first look at what Miami might be about. I mean, I think the narrative there is going to be, hey, it looks like the AFC East has the potential to be every bit as good as everybody thought, because Miami checked their box yesterday.
Yeah, for sure, man. They're going to be a problem for sure, and that defense kind of reminds me in a way like when the Bills offense is clicking, the Bills defense doesn't have to be dominant. You just got to make a couple plays. That's how the Chiefs have been winning for years. You know what I mean? The offense just dominates. And with the Chiefs defense, just make a money play when it matters. And that's kind of what Miami did on Sunday.
Did the Chargers get after Tua at all? Is Bosa and see, here's where me not watching obviously shows itself. Bosa and Mac both in the lineup, healthy. Were they getting after Tua at all?
I don't know how many sacks they had, but they definitely pressured him. I thought Tua played really well. Again, he had a really, really bad interception. It was an inexcusable interception he threw to JC Jackson in the end zone too. But that aside, I thought he played really well. Got rid of the ball pretty quick. He didn't seem afraid to hold on to it when he needed to have time to make plays. I thought they might miss Gesicki, but they didn't. I mean, I don't even know the guy's names, but they had a couple tight ends making catches. That Braxton Berrios had a couple really nice catches too. He's a good slot receiver. He's got that Cole Beasley in him, man.
Actually, I played some Madden the other day where Berrios, I was like, oh shit, the Dolphins got Berrios.
Yeah, they're good, man. New England, we didn't really watch much of that game, but it's funny because they play competitive against quite possibly the best team in the NFL, the most complete team in the NFL anyway. And they were down 16-0 early on. It was like we were on Twitter, not we, but a lot of people were on Twitter laughing at them. Mac Jones threw a really ugly pick six and looked lazy, even trying to bring down Darius Slay. Darius Slay is the one who ran it back to the house. But from that point on, they played really well, and they only ended up losing 25-20, and they had the ball inside the 30 at the end of the game with a chance to pull it out at the end. I kind of feel like what we saw, just one game, so, I'm not going to overreact too much from one game, but I feel like that might be a microcosm of what the Patriots are going to be this year, a competitive team. Maybe they're, roughly around 500, but they could beat you. And they got a good defense. The Patriots defense is very good. I thought they played, from what I saw, during the game on Sunday, that it wasn't the defense that was the problem, it was the offense. The offense came around a little bit later on, but they're a competitive team. I think that's pretty fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with that. I checked out on that game, getting ready to come tape and stuff like that. And when I saw that New England had gotten back into it, it kind of had a feel like Philly went to sleep.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit.
So I don't know. I don't know what we learned about New England. And again, take that with a grain of salt, because I don't know what we really learned about anybody today. But yeah,
I think it's fair. I think you can learn something about Miami in just one game. That one game showed me enough about Miami to be convinced that they're for real.
I'm good with that. All right. I'm good. I'm good with Miami, but there were a lot of 1:00 games where I don't feel like I learned shit.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Like I didn't learn anything about Baltimore. All right. Other than J.K. Dobbins just appears to just be unable to stay healthy.
Yeah. He's gone for the year too. Tear his Achilles. Yep.
And there were a couple others where it just kind of, I don't know how much we even learned about Cleveland and Cincinnati, even though the result was a bit of a surprise. I think we all can look at it and say the Cincinnati piece of it is somewhat explainable by the lack of reps that Burrow got.
Sure.
And did the Browns jump out at you? I'll tell you the all other aspects other than the passing game, which is probably the most important to jump out at you. All right. Whether or not he's an absolute dirtball or not. That did not jump out at me for Cleveland, but all right. Chubb's ability and Watson as a runner, even though they didn't do it much, there were a couple times that, a couple designed runs to Watson.
Mm-hmm.
And so does Watson kind of, create a different 1-2 dynamic with Chubb, than what he had with Houston. The other dirtball that was there, Kareem Hunt.
Oh,
yeah. So it looks like Cleveland could run. All right, it looks like Cleveland can play D.
They definitely can play defense,
but we're not going to really know about Cleveland until we see whether or not.
How do you feel? How do you feel about Cleveland? How do you feel about Cleveland going in? Because that's a team that I think a lot of people have slept on. Like everyone, in the AFC North, it's Cincinnati and it's Baltimore. And if you're talking about a team that might surprise, if Pittsburgh's getting a lot of credit, don't really hear nobody talking about.
I like Pittsburgh. I was surprised. I went after a lot of Steelers in my lone fantasy draft. I thought Najee Harris would.
I got Pickens.
It's early as hell, but they laid an egg.
Brock Purdy looks good, man. There's just something about him too. I don't know what it is. He just feels like a star quarterback to me. I don't know what it is. He just, for being the last pick of the draft, and he just going into his second year, he just plays under so much control. It seems it's just so cool and calm out there. Anyway, yeah, San Francisco completely dominating them. Big performance from McCaffrey, of course. Going back to that Browns-Bengals game, though, Chubb had over 100 yards rushing. Yeah, if I'm a Bengals fan, I mean, if you're a Bills fan, which, most people who are watching and listening are, you want to see Cincinnati lose. So that's always good. They just, I don't know, man, because that's probably the 1:00 game where I spent the most time watching. I got Red Zone, but I spent a lot of time watching that Bengals game today. And just felt like they didn't even show up, They didn't show up. And Burrow, again, he's been out with the calf injury now for weeks. You could just tell they had only 6 first downs. They only had 6 first downs for the whole game. An offense as high-powered and balanced as the Bengals were held to 6 first downs. So I'm a Bengals fan. I'm not worried about it yet. But you certainly don't want to come out and stink up the joint like they did against a divisional rival, to start the season. So not good start for them. The Thursday. So we haven't talked, obviously. And I haven't had a podcast since the Chiefs played on Thursday night. Did you get to watch that game on Thursday?
I watched more of that than I do the average NFL game. Yeah, I caught a good bit of it.
Yeah, that was I don't know. What do you think about the Chiefs right now? Again, let's not go crazy. It's one game. And of course, Travis Kelce didn't play, and Chris Jones is still holding out. Which, by the way, Chris Jones is a big loss on that team. I still, to this day, so without having to relive how bad Kadarius Toney played on Thursday night.
Why? What's the problem reliving that? It was funny.
It was funny. It was horrible. It was one of the worst single performance games I've ever seen. And I put something on Twitter afterwards. Didn't really get much of a response from it, but I was trying to think of a Buffalo Bills performance that might have been worse than that, a single game performance. Not counting
That's a good one.
Not counting Nate Peterman, because that would be the obvious one against the Chargers. And I came up with off the top of my head, and I haven't really thought about it much since then, but remember the 2020 AFC Championship game, what Chris Jones did to John Feliciano and Mitch Morris, but mainly Feliciano. He just absolutely abused him and he could not block him. Chris Jones just dominated that game from start to finish. That's kind of what came to mind. Anyway, point being, that's how important Chris Jones is, I think, anyway, to the Chiefs.
Yeah, man, and Kelsey's there too. I mean, it's like, you know, they're
Sure.
probably their second and third. You know, well, I don't think there's any probablys about it. They're second and third best players on a very top heavy team. All right, so we're not talking about, you know, once you start to have to pay that quarterback, all right, you become a top heavy team, and they're a top heavy team with two of their top guys out. Now, the thing that I think about watching those receivers is this. Obviously, it's going to take some time for them to, you know, to mesh with Mahomes, but it comes down to this: if those receivers are good, like if they're actual good players, if they were good draft picks and they study and all those sort of things,
Mhm.
then Mahomes will get them there. All right, but you know, do we really have any idea if any of these guys are good? Are they, you know what I mean? Like, is Sky Moore good?
Right.
Is Sky Moore good? I have no idea if Sky Moore is good. The dude they drafted this year from, like, what was it, Rutgers or whatever?
Was she Rice?
Yeah, is dude good? I don't know. There's a good chance he might not be.
Yeah.
So if they're not good, if they don't take, you know, significant steps as receivers as the season goes on, then that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So before that, for people who are watching, by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, all that fun stuff. So let's continue to grow the show. But anyway, we're stuck. We both hate this shit. If you're watching this on video, we got handheld mics right now. And normally we got our boom arms with the studio mics, but I had a second one come in. It was an issue with Best Buy. It's driving me crazy switching hands and doing this shit. It just feels weird to me sitting there.
I'm finding my comfort zone with it. I got the elbow on this right here.
Not me.
Watching myself is a whole lot of fun. Like I'm totally that guy. I can't get enough of myself in the mirror and whatever. And it's not because, like, you know, I'm anything to look at. It's just, you know, I mean, that's just the level of conceit that we're dealing with here.
You know, it's funny.
But I don't think I'm looking at the camera. I think what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the screen and myself, and thus not looking at the camera at all.
You know, I should be used to this too. I mean, I literally do shows in Imperial all the time where I'm holding the mics in my hand. It's just, I don't know. It's just like I can't get comfortable today. But anyway, let me ask you this question. So the Chiefs are 0-1. And by the way, well, we'll get to the Detroit Lions in a second. The Chiefs are 0-1. The Bengals are 0-1. If you're a fan of those teams, who would you be more concerned about? Again, let's not overreact too much. But if you're a Chiefs fan or you're a Bengals fan, who should be more worried about the start for their team and how they look?
Well, it depends on how, you know,
going forward.
It depends on how, like, you know, how much you have that negative energy. Like a Chiefs fan right now, they've got two recent Super Bowls. So
Sure.
that fan base believes that they'll overcome. It's not like, you know, a team that's you know, that struggled to win in the playoffs just laid that egg. They're a champion, you know what I mean, and they feel like they'll overcome it. My guess is, and I don't even know that this is right, you know what I mean, like I don't even know that the team, you know, that the fan base that should be more worried is necessarily the Bengal fan base. I just would suspect that they are, because, you know, what did they think the natural progression would be, you know, after going to the Super Bowl 2 years ago? You know what I mean? They probably felt like they belonged back there. And now are they going to worry, like, oh, you know, there's probably some overreaction amongst Cincy fans, because they don't have the title that the Chiefs fans have.
I would be more worried about the Chiefs, just because, I mean, I feel like the Bengals are a very they're deep, man. They're well-rounded. I just don't see holes on this roster. I mean, they certainly didn't play like it on Sunday. It just feels like almost too much is put on Patrick Mahomes. I think that first of all, them not coming to agreement with Chris Jones, I think that was probably the biggest reason why they lost on Thursday. He's going to make a play somewhere along the way in that game, I feel like, and the Chiefs are probably 1-0 with him. But even if I'm wrong about Chris Jones, I just not going out and getting a receiver, I think is going to come back and bite them. Too much reliance on Travis Kelce, and we saw literally what happened when you don't have Travis Kelce on the field. You just said it, and I agree with you 100%. You don't even know if these guys are any good right now, and you're messing around with the best quarterback in the NFL, bar none. And
it'll probably be, it'll probably be a long way from people's thought processes by the time you look back on the season and stuff like that. And they may very well, all right, strike at the trade deadline with a guy like Mike Evans, so people wouldn't think about this at all. But how aggressive or not, were they with DeAndre Hopkins?
Right. Yeah.
That's the obvious name that I think people would look at and be like, how could they not go and do that if this is what they're rolling out at receiver?
Yeah, I'm shocked that they didn't do something, and maybe they were confident that these young guys, and maybe there's somebody, maybe Tony's going to have better days. He's a good football player. We don't know about Moore. We don't know about Rice. Rice had a nice little rookie debut though.
See, hold on. I get what you're saying. You're just kind of breezing through it, but is he a good football player?
I don't know.
Is Tony a good football player? Like, is Brian Daboll just go out and and who's there? Schoen? Is it Schoen or the other guys? Yep. Are they just trading a third round pick for for not a whole heck of a lot? I know he wasn't their pick. I don't think he was their pick. But man, I'm just saying, I'll put Kadarius Toney in that same boat. All right, as the Sky Moores, and I'll maybe put those two at the very top of that. Are they good? Are those receivers good? Can the Chiefs still be good without them being good? Probably. Once they get Kelce back, it'll create more space for those dudes. But no, there's reason for Kansas City fans to be concerned, because I just don't know that that the receiving group. You don't have that question with Cincy. Yeah. All right. You don't have that. Those guys are going to get off. Like, I don't even remember seeing a ball towards, did Higgins play? Higgins
he didn't have a catch today.
What? I mean,
he had like 8 targets too. I don't think he had a catch today. Just a really bad day for the Bengals. I'm a little more concerned if I'm a Chiefs fan, I think. And also another reason I was going to say, I thought the Chargers were well on the way to beating Miami. And I'm like, the Chargers are really good. And what an enigma the Chargers are to me, because God, they got weapons galore, so much talent on that team. And then you look at the defense, and you mentioned they got Bosa, they got Mack, they got Derwin James, one of the best safeties in the NFL, and they can't stop anybody. And the offensive line, which was the problem last year in injuries, it broke down when it mattered most. Anyway, the Chargers going to beat Miami. I'm like, the Chiefs are in trouble in their own division. So I don't know. Again, only one game. Before we take a break, too, quick. 2 other teams in the AFC that people don't really kind of talk about much. It's Buffalo, it's Kansas City, it's Cincinnati, but Baltimore and Jacksonville both won today. No, I'm not going to give too much credit to Baltimore. They beat Houston at home. Jacksonville, though, it's never easy to win on the road. And I watched a lot of that Jacksonville game, and that's another team that I think fans should be paying more attention to. I think Jacksonville, this is the year I think they become a legit contender. I'm not saying they're better than the Bills or KC or Cincinnati, but they deserve to be in the mix, I think.
I have no idea what they bring to the table defensively. If they start, I don't know how many times.
Josh Allen had 3 sacks today.
Did he really?
Yeah.
I don't know how much prime time, burn they get this year, but if I start seeing them play some defense, I mean, chances are they're a team that's going to be in the tournament. Just because of where that division is, and their current trajectory looks good. Offensively, they look good. But I think I want to see just how they how they stop people as the season progresses, and I'll kind of base just how much I'm worried on about
they're in a
them
weak they're in a weak division too. That's why I think I'm high on them, because it's almost a lock that they're going to win the division, which winning the division automatically means obviously making the playoffs and having a home game too. Bills will be there, of course, or not there. They'll be in London week 5 to play the Jags. Yeah, and then the Ravens, they're good.
Didn't find out anything to me, anyways. Yeah. I didn't find out anything about the Ravens.
I did. One
Jaguars.
Zay Flowers is good. I found that out about him. He had like 80 yards today. He looked fast, elusive. He's their best. I think he might already be their best receiver, not Odell Beckham Jr. By the way, I saw a stat not related to anything we really talked about, but coaches making their debuts went 0-5 on Sunday. And the three starting quarterbacks, the first rounders who started in their debut, went 0-3. So not a good day for newbies here on week one of the NFL. Anyway, we're going to take a real quick break and come back on the other side, and we'll get into some Bills talk. Of course, tonight, Bills and the Jets, big Monday night game. Be right back. All right, I'm back here, Monday edition of Talking Buffalo with my guest with me in studio. I got to get used to saying that. Tone Pucks. We haven't talked Bills. You and I talk sporadically up until recently because we're going to be doing this podcast together, but we kind of like our conversations are sporadic. And we really don't talk much about Bills. It's usually talking shit about our friends or shit going on Twitter or whatever. Just talking shit about, you tell me how bad my fantasy baseball team is and all that other bullshit. But my point is, we really don't talk too much about the Bills. So some of your thoughts and shit like that, I'm actually kind of learning along with everybody who's watching and who's listening to this show. All right. So obviously a big game tonight for the Bills opening up the season. Let me ask you this: game itself aside, the totality of this team right now, following the offseason, training camp, preseason, where are you at with this team right now?
I'm comfortable with both hot takes on this team. All right. I'm comfortable with the people that want to talk about the window closing and some of the, the issues from the offseason, namely Stephon Diggs. Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable. I don't think that, the national media's chirping, all right, is entirely trolling. All right, I'll put it that way. And
some of it is.
Yeah, I get you.
So
but I think
they come finish last in the division. That's trolling.
That is. I pay no attention to it.
Yeah, go ahead. My bad.
No, that's fine. But I'm also just fine with the homer take that this is as deep a roster as they've put together in years. And I'll give you an example. All right. I mean, I think we were all glad to see that McDermott, this was a little weird, by the way, McDermott saying that Hyde wasn't going to practice, and then he did.
Right. Yeah.
You don't usually see that sort of disconnect, between the head coach. And I mean, that was weird. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, of course, we love Mike Hyde. We love the potential that he has, to make plays like he did against New England in the playoffs. And he's just, he's steady Eddie back there for sure. But did you really sweat the potential of his absence? All right. Knowing that, the Rapp's there, Hamlin's there. I mean, there's a lot of depth at that position. And that's just, that's just one. All right. There are others like it that, that I would be in the same boat, if they suffered an injury that, that last year and years past might leave us very, very thin. I'd be hard pressed other than linebacker. All right. Other than linebacker, be hard pressed to name a position this year where I feel like next man up would kill us.
It's a good point. I agree with you 100%. I think the strength of this team compared to last year is the depth is significantly better all around. I would say injuries that would cripple them, and every single team in the NFL has 3 to 4 irreplaceable guys, essentially. Any team that's good anyway. Obviously, Josh Allen, that goes without saying, and Stephon Diggs. Left tackle, if Deion Dawkins goes down, they're in trouble at tackle because I feel like the offensive tackle depth is not good. And then Matt Milano at linebacker. They're really thin at linebacker, so you can't afford to lose him. But yeah, man.
Hold on, let's play this out real quick. I mean, Spencer Brown's never played the left side since he's come here.
Nope, he won't.
Effetti or whatever, brand spanking new.
Or Ryan Vandermark. But yeah, one of those two guys.
Injury, I've got my guy. You haven't mentioned him. All right. Injury to Deion in the game, whatever. Let's just say during the course of the game and someone's got to come in. I think the guys that you mentioned, like Vandermark and maybe even Alec Anderson is in that conversation. I think with a week of practice to go, a reshuffling could take place. But let's just say tonight Dawkins goes down, all right, for a stretch. not just a plug, not just to plug a play or two, but a stretch.
Right.
Who's the guy?
I think you're going to go. I think you're headed towards Ryan Bates, right?
I think I am. I think I am. Although I don't know if Bates has ever played the left either, and I'm not really hung up on left versus right, but they very well may be.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility if something were to happen to Deion Dawkins. Plus, going back to the depth thing, the depth on the offensive line this year to me is much better because now Bates is a depth guy instead of a starter, and that's in part because your rookie won the job. And I also like David Edwards a lot at left guard. He played in the last preseason game when Connor McGovern got hurt. He was a starter on the Rams when they won the Super Bowl. He's a good guard. So
yeah, if those contracts are reversed, or let's just say those contracts are even, all right, I think we're having a more of a conversation about left guard. I think McGovern's got that. Yeah, I mean, it's not that he hasn't shown, you know what I mean? It's not like he's looked like shit. But he was a big early signing, and I think that's who they were gonna run with.
Yeah. I agree 100%. If the contracts were equal, David Edwards would definitely be in the mix. But yeah, the depth's better there. Leonard Floyd was a really good pickup. Again, not the most flashy pickups, but guys like Puna Ford, who, by the way, he might not even play tonight.
I don't even know what's up with that, man. I mean, I think
he's the 5th defensive tackle right now.
I mean, according to their own depth chart, they put Settle ahead of him. Jordan Phillips they put ahead of him, and Phillips has gotten very few. Very few reps and stuff like that. So we'll see. I mean, is Puna Ford, break glass in case of a Jonathan Taylor game from 2 years ago? You know what I mean? In case you're looking like that team that's going to have the shit beat out of you up front.
I like him. I like him significantly better than Tim Settle. But in fairness, I watched him at camp and he looked good in the preseason. Tim Settle looked good in the preseason.
And Ford lasted a long time in free agency.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, that's not there's something probably to be said for that.
For sure. So yeah, I agree with you. I think the depth is the strength of this team right now. Besides, of course, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Another point going into the season, and again, this isn't just so much for 1 week. This is for 17 weeks. A guy that I feel like is really poised to be that next star player is definitely Greg Rizzo. He looks so good at camp, and he played with a high ankle sprain last year. I think he had 8 sacks, 5 as a rookie. I could see him having 12 sacks this year easily, man. And I think it was 2016. Lorenzo Alexander had 12.5 sacks. So it's been since 2016 since anyone's had that many sacks. I think he's got the potential to be a Pro Bowl type player.
Well, you mentioned seeing him at camp. You're a little fanboyish with camp. You're like, anybody got an extra? Anybody got an extra?
It worked. I kept getting tickets.
You seemed like it.
Yeah,
you were getting there.
I went to 5 practices. I don't know. I just kind of felt like, first of all, I had the time to be able to do it, and secondly, if you're gonna. Now it's an even playing field for everybody because everyone's watching the games. But at camp and practice, if you have a show, how much can you really talk about how good a guy looks or doesn't look when you're not watching it? You know what I mean? So that's why I made every effort. Plus, it's fun.
Absolutely, man. I would just be talking about what everybody else is talking about. Just like, this dude was there, and he
says training camp's fun. Maybe training camp to me is like going to spring training for baseball. There's like not a bad seat in the house. You know what I mean?
I don't want to get too off the subject because I want to talk about Greg Rousseau because frankly, well, maybe I don't want to talk about him because I have no clue. I haven't seen anything yet that makes me think. I mean, I don't think he looks like Epinesa or Boogie. Right. All right, but I don't know that he's taken the big step. But here's my thing with training camp. All right, and then we'll get back to it. Man, I used to go when I could literally be about 20 feet away from Bruce. I remember going to a training camp one year, and I was watching the defensive line, and Bruce had just come back after falling asleep in his car, drunk at a red light. All right. And Ted Washington was just ribbing on his ass nonstop. And you could see that shit, man. You're right there. It was damn, I'd be damned if it wasn't like a wooden fence or something. It was right there. Some rickety old fence, the only thing keeping you back, all right, from watching, one of the best pass rushers of all time getting his balls busted by a beloved Bill and Ted Washington. Now the way, you're in the stands, it's a far more commercialized event. I can't get there because that to me is how I'll always remember how I'll always remember the training.
You know, one thing my mic was muted for a second there. Sorry. But anyway, I was starting to say, can you imagine a world in those days of social media with Jim Kelly, the way he was, and Bruce, and all these guys, these guys were legendary for some of their off-field shit. The parties at Jim Kelly's house on Sundays, after these games and stuff like that. But just Twitter then with those guys, that crew, that cast would have been crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and it's obviously it's the natural thing for us to do is to think about our old teams and how Twitter would be with them. But I think it would be true across the across the NFL. I think and just across all of sports. They were just they were partying a hell of a lot more, or at least yeah, no, that was true, right? Like the old time athletes, man. I mean, they were playing hung up. Just these guys, they seem just a lot more in tune with their bodies and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so those guys were tying it on, and I think the Bills are one of many teams that that social media would not have served well.
I talked to John Fina. I had him on the show recently, and I asked him, and I was kind of surprised by his answer. I asked him if he hates the fact that Twitter exists today with athletes, because most athletes are on social media and they tweet and stuff like that. And I expected him to say that, I wouldn't want Twitter when he was playing. He said he would. And the reason he gave is that it gives him, the player, an opportunity to have a defense. Like when people are criticizing them, if a writer is going at them or making up stories, and he says this, writers would embellish stories and shit all the time. And back in those days, they were the player was more or less defenseless to really kind of defend themselves. Where in today's world with social media, if Mark Gaughan writes this scathing column, he's not going, I'm just using him as an example, and he writes this scathing column on Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox could take to Twitter and say, you know what, that's not true. I didn't say that, or whatever. You know what I mean? So that kind of surprised me that John said that, and it does make sense.
I remember being surprised by it when I was listening and he said that.
You weren't you weren't listening, and you weren't.
No, I get it though. No, I get. I mean, I definitely get that. I think there's some guys that that wouldn't have had to be, shy about it. I think there's some guys that would have enjoyed it. Sure.
I kind of like doing a show with somebody who admittedly doesn't even watch or listen to the show.
Yeah, I thought about that. I have a little index card where I write down like a couple things in case, I draw a total blank. I don't think I've looked at it one time, but that is actually one point that I made about just my general disengagement from the podcast world. And it's just it just doesn't make the cut, man. There's just so many other things, like I'm still a video gamer, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Video gaming. But hopefully people look, man,
are you going to start at least watching your own shows?
Absolutely, dude.
Because listen, you admitted in the past, I mean, it was only audio in the past, but you told me in the past you didn't even listen to the episodes that we did.
I'll be up watching this, like, well, you won't have it out, but I don't know, maybe you'll send it to me.
It'll be out
like
on
that.
If you watch it on video, it'll actually be out really late on Sunday going into Monday morning.
Dude, listen, I did a game. I did a football game on Saturday that was on Western New York Athletics, and it was an absolute dud. I mean, nothing against the teams that were playing. I got to stay away from that because if I could get to talking about some games that I do on Friday nights, and if the wrong person hears, believe me, it'll end up coming back. But yeah, it was a blowout. But for some reason or another, Western New York Athletics was there. So, as soon as I got home, I rewound that shit and watched
watch yourself in action.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
All right, getting back to the Bills. So your take on Greg Rizzo is that you don't know what to think of him yet?
Hard hitting shit right there. Yeah. No, man. No, what do you have? 8 sacks last year? No, Von went down last year. Okay. And I didn't get that. I didn't get that step up from Rousseau, and I don't think it's fair to really be too critical of him for that.
Right.
But in year 3, and I certainly don't want to have to do it without, if in the same set of circumstances, we'll see it. We'll get a taste of it here early without Von. And it's time to see it. If that's going to happen, it's going to happen now. Right. I mean, it's going to happen with Von down. And it needs to. I mean, it needs to, because the ship has kind of sailed, all right, on the other two that were in the same that were in the same boat. I mean,
sure,
maybe we get a little something from Epinesa, but Basham's gone, and I don't, I don't think that anybody's really counting on anything from Epinesa. So if you don't get something from Rousseau, that's going to be a problem.
And you're not wrong about him last year not stepping up when Vaughn went down. In fairness to him, though, he did also have a high ankle sprain, which definitely slowed him down. And I think one of the bigger narratives about this team right now that people aren't talking anything about is Leonard Floyd. I looked it up, and I didn't even realize this when the Bills signed him. He's had at least 9 sacks 3 straight years in the entire history of this franchise since the first year in 1960 through now. The Bills have only had 2 pass rushers ever who've had 3 straight years of at least 9 sacks. Bruce, obviously, and Mario Williams. That's it in the history of the franchise. So, I mean, they have a guy who's going to come in and should be able to get you 9 sacks, even if he's not playing that much, which when Vaughn's back, he won't see as many reps. You don't buy it?
No, I'm not buying 9.
Why not?
I'm not buying 9 sacks from Leonard Floyd because honestly, if you're a GM in the NFL who truly believes that there's a 9 sack guy sitting out there on the free agency,
Yeah, he was around for a long time.
All right, you're grabbing him, man. You're grabbing him. My guess is there are some out there. Again, I don't pay attention to certain stats that might start to tell the story before it starts to happen. Not that I don't believe in them. I just don't have a whole lot of time on my hands to pay attention to them. Leonard Floyd might fall off a cliff.
Could.
All right. I mean, Leonard Floyd might
but
fall off
I would,
a cliff.
you could be right. It could happen. But I will say there was a solid handful, and I can't think of them off the top of my head. Of course, I can't right now. But there were a solid handful of good pass rushers that did not sign anywhere until after the draft because teams weren't going to give them multi-year deals or whatever. And at that point, they just decided to wait until the draft and see what team would need a guy, or GMs would say a guy like Leonard Floyd, for an example, we're interested in you, but we want to see how the draft plays out first. Or I can't think. Ingram's definitely one of them. I don't even remember where he ended up going to. I want to say he went to Pittsburgh. He went to Pittsburgh.
Ingram feels like much later than Floyd. I could be wrong, but
but there was like a group of those type of caliber players that, we're waiting until after the draft to see how it plays out. I don't know. I like him a lot. I think he's an underrated player, or he's going into the season an underrated narrative. I think he's going to be a good player. And then the other thing, it's tough to put expectations on rookies, but I'll tell you, going to camp for 5 days and watching practice in the preseason, the Bills and 31 other teams too, and the Bills weren't exclusive to this. They didn't show shit in the preseason by design. We didn't see any motion. You didn't see nothing in the preseason. I think this offense is going to be significantly different this year. I think the Dalton Kincaid effect is going to happen right away. I think they're going to play a ton of that 12 personnel with 2 tight ends out there. They call it 11.5 personnel because he's kind of like a receiver. But whether he's playing a big slot, whether he's in line, he's an H-back, I think you're going to see a lot from this kid. I think the Bills got 2 rookies this year who are going to give us instant impact, which is not something that Buffalo rookies usually do here, man.
Yeah, what's interesting though, and it makes me maybe a little nervous, is I think everybody feels that way about Kincaid. I feel like I just feel like everybody's expecting there to be this huge involvement with Kincaid, and that makes me nervous when everybody thinks one way on something. Because I agree, man. I'm like, I think he's gonna catch 4 or 5 passes a game, and now once you start saying that, you're getting up potentially into a 60-70 range, and those are big numbers.
You say that it makes you nervous because everyone thinks he's going to do good things. And Bijan Robinson for the Falcons, that's a guy, he picked top 10 pick of the draft, fantasy football, early first round pick. I'm like, dude, he's a rookie. He can be that good. And then I watched him play today, and he scores just a freak move to score a touchdown. And he's as good as advertised. And I kind of feel like that is Dalton Kincaid. The thing I noticed about him, watching him run routes and stuff, it doesn't even look like he's trying. It's like effortless. His hands are really good, and it's just his strides. It doesn't even look like he's running that hard, but he's quick, man. I think he's going to be a big part of this offense. And we talked depth about the Bills a few minutes ago, and shame on me, not even mentioning the wide receivers, because that might be where I think the depth is the most improved on this whole roster. You lose Jamison Crowder, an injured Jamison Crowder. You lose a washed up Cole Beasley. You lose a washed up John Brown. And sure, they made a couple plays here and there, but for the most part, they weren't real factors. And then you go and you get Trent Sherfield, who I like a lot, and Deontay Hardy, who I also like a lot for specific roles. I think he's an improvement over Isaiah McKenzie. I don't know what the Bills are going to do at receiver. I don't know how much Kincaid is going to be the third guy. I don't know how much it's going to be Hardy or it's going to be Sherfield. But the options this year just seem so much better than they do last year.
Well, receiver's a position where, depth means something different than, say, safety. All right.
Mhm.
A safety depth means, hey, if one of our guys gets nicked or whatever, we've got Rap, we've got DeMar. You can even throw in Cam Lewis, depending upon, I don't know what
Mhm.
they consider him. But receiver depth, though, is guys who play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
1 through 4 get burned.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's a different kind of depth. And that might be just as advantageous of a roster building this offseason as the depth that guards against injury. All
Mhm.
right, is the depth and the versatility that you can put on the field. With your skill position. So yeah, I'm pumped about Bills receivers. I don't think we got much going on beyond the top 4. I'm not ready. Well, I mean, Shakir showed that he can catch a couple balls, but
he's disappointing me though this summer. I had high expectations of him going into camp. I was Joe Miller, who is a podcast over at Buffalo Rumblings. I watched the practice with him, and I'm telling him this guy's starting. He's looking good. He's not, and he didn't look good. I mean, he's a second year kid. There's, the growth potential is definitely still there for him, but not a good summer for him. He hurt his stock maybe as much as anyone, except for Terrell Dodson, anyone on this team.
I love us 1 through 4 at receiver. I worry if we have to dig deep. Last year, we had to dig deep a little bit, especially when Crowder went down, man. I mean, Crowder was supposed to be the Beasley replacement, and the Beasley, position, that was a big one to Josh. Josh used it a lot, and then it became, it ended up in flux last year, almost for the entire season. I think they, I think they have guys that can do it this year with Kincaid and Hardy, and I think Sherfield, I think he plays it too. So
he does.
They left themselves, exposed last year. And it so happens to be the 2 positions that I've alluded to a couple times. They left themselves a little exposed at safety, and they left themselves a little exposed at receiver. And they built it back. I don't think safety, again, it's not a position unless you're going to play Rap with some regularity, which a lot of people think they will.
Mhm.
All right, safety is a guard against the aging current starters type of depth.
Yeah.
Receiver is, we've got a bunch of guys that can do different things in different spots on the field, sort of depth. So it's a little bit different, but I'm excited about receivers, and that doesn't even, that doesn't even account for Kincaid. I think they're pass catchers. This is the best group of pass catchers Josh Allen's ever had. By a lot.
I agree.
By a lot.
100% agree. And I really like Trent Sherfield. He could play the slot. He could play for either outside position. He could play outside in 3 receiver sets, and you can move Stephon Diggs into the slot in some looks. So I think he's going to be a really valuable pickup. And he was a guy that Miami did not want to lose. Let me ask you this too, as we're winding down here. We know like all the positive things about the Bills. What's to like about this team. A lot of them are obvious too. But going into tonight's game and into the season in general, what are, not counting injuries because that goes without saying, but like what are 1 or 2 things about this team that has you concerned the most? Whether they're the same talking points that a lot of people are talking about, or maybe some stuff that might, fly under the radar a little bit. But like 1 or 2 of your biggest areas of concern with this team going into tonight and into the season.
The schedule is tough. All right. I
Sure.
mean, that's the first one that comes to mind. All right. And it's actually tonight's game. I have a bit of an opposite feel for tonight's game. Like tonight's game, I think is a coin toss, and it's not going to really rattle me if the Bills don't win it because, and I do believe in any given Sunday and all that.
Mhm.
All right. But things get a little bit easier all right, in the weeks to come. I think the Bills can bounce back from a loss, and even though it'll drive us crazy for a week, all right, when the narrative becomes that, you know, the Jets and the
Tuesday
and
morning
the Dolphins,
Tuesday morning
suck.
ESPN first take will be unwatchable.
Everything is still there, all right, for the Bills. Again, as far as the schedule lines up, all right, it's there for the Bills to overcome an opening night loss. But then it just, you know, it starts to get brutal just before the bye and after the bye. And those are just, man, it's just a lot of games that I just call coin flip games. Just about anything inside a field goal. Sorry, but for me, flip a coin. And those are, we're not going to be a heavy favorite. We may be favored in a lot, but we're not going to be more than a touchdown favorite very often, as opposed to last year. All right, when you know, it felt like we had some games we lost, one of them maybe to the Vikings, but
that still bothers me.
I just went into a lot of games last year feeling like we're just a much better football team, and this year, and it all stems from the tougher division, right? I mean, it all stems from 2 against the Jets that are no longer,
they're not
cupcakes, although you only split with them anyway. But yeah, man, it's just the schedule makes me nervous, and the potential, all right, for it to get really stressful and for just the dig stuff. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be digs, but that type of stuff to resurface. I caught a very little bit of a pregame today, and the one thing that, oh no, it wasn't a pregame. It was a Bills hype video where it started off with some naysayers. All right. And one of them was, there's just so much pressure on this team. There is so much stress around this team.
Sure.
And mind you, I actually ended up like forgetting about that because the rest of the hype video got me all hyped. But when he said it, I can't remember who it was. It was a national guy. I mean, I think, they didn't quote like a schmuck. When he said it, I was like, man, that seems right. There's a lot of pressure on this team.
There is, man. There really is. And I don't think Sean McDermott's in any danger if the Bills underperform this year. I don't think he's getting fired. Certainly there'll be there'll be whispers, and they might turn a little bit louder about him, but can Josh Allen win? You know what I mean? There's lots of things that if the Bills, if they don't go at least to that championship game this year, if they bow out in the divisional round or earlier, there'll be a lot of questions to answer. And I agree with you about the schedule. It's a brutal schedule. The division's tough. No gimme games. They're at Kansas City. They're at Cincinnati. A lot of tough games on the schedule. Let me wrap by asking this. And by the way, so people have asked, people like to think I know a lot about fucking the Bills and shit. So I'm always being asked, what do you think about the game? What do you think about the game? I swear I've been asked that.
Who's asking you this? Why? Who's
people at work, friends, family, people who, think my opinion matters.
All right.
People watching and listening to this show. Anyway, I keep saying the same simple thing because it's true. I don't know. Like tonight's game with this Jets game, how do you like this game? Or do you like the Bills tonight? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to expect tonight. I don't know what to expect. I kind of know what I'm going to get from the Bills. Although I think this offense is going to look a lot different than anything we've seen this summer because of Delta Kincaid and how much more 2 tight end sets that they play. But I don't know what to expect from the Jets tonight. You got a brand new quarterback, played his first game. It's a home game. Does he have that built-in chemistry with these receivers yet? He's not the MVP quarterback of a few years ago, but this dude ain't Mac Jones either. You know what I mean? He is a good quality quarterback still in this league. And the Jets are loaded, man.
It's the Jets so sexy. It's so sexy. I mean, this fucking football game is so sexy.
It really is. And even if you're not just a Bills fan, if you're just a football fan, this is a fun game to want to watch. Primetime way to open up the season, but the Jets are loaded on paper. I really think they are. I think defense is great. Garrett Wilson is going to be a top 10 receiver for sure this year if he stays healthy. Then you get Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, like I'm okay with people that may question, Hall's explosiveness coming off the injury. Like I think he'll probably be on a pitch count.
Sure, early on, yeah. If
But
he even plays tomorrow.
I don't want to hear, Dalvin Cook, is maybe he's on the, the very beginning of the back end. Maybe the trajectory is just, is starting to go the other way with him. But Dalvin Cook also, ran rampant on us.
I was gonna say, he didn't look old and washed up last year.
Saying, man,
that long touchdown run, holy shit!
People are just so dismissive of him and the running back position as a whole, and I get that. I believe, in a lot of, what's happening there in terms of the dropping value of running backs. But Dalvin Cook's a good football player.
Yeah,
man.
He is.
He's a good football player, and basically what it means is, whether it's Hall or whether it's Cook, nothing against whoever their third is, Carter or whatever, but they're gonna have a stud in the backfield on just about every down. So their skill positions, all right, they were ready-made team for a quarterback. Bills fans have every reason imaginable to fear this team tomorrow. They're gonna be good. And I'm even a little surprised that, that the spread is our way as much as it is.
I got one final Bills, I guess we'll call it a hot take or whatever. But, for all the talk about Josh and McDermott running the defense now and all these, with Von Miller coming back and all these major storylines, to me, starting with tonight's game and throughout the season, maybe one of the most top 3 important factors for the Bills this year is going to be, is Trey White pre-ACL Trey White again? Because he came back last year, and all the credit to him for coming back. But he wasn't himself. He was not good. Let's just put it that way. But he looked, he's worked his ass off all off season. He looked really good this summer. What we saw in the preseason a little bit, he's got to be that guy. Because, we just talked about some of these. He's going to see Tyreek Hill twice. He's going to see Garrett Wilson twice. He's going to see Jamar Chase. He's going to see all these great receivers. And the level of play that he was at last year won't be good enough. He's got to be back to where he was, I think, for this defense and this team to reach their potential.
You're not going to get any disagreement here. The only thing that that you mentioned there that I wish we would have had a chance to spend more time on, because we talked a little bit about what the offense may look like. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we talked about it from individual players, but schematically, what McDermott calling the plays is going to look like is
more
very, very
linebacker sets.
Very interesting tomorrow. Tonight.
I'm interested in seeing Christian Benford play too. I was really impressed with him this summer, and good on him to be the third guy in that competition and just beat out 2 other guys and win the job. I know that doesn't look good for Kyrie Elam, that's for sure. By the way, Kyrie Elam might be chilling in the same kind of gear that we are for tonight's game, because I wouldn't be surprised if he's a game day inactive right now, which, again, bust after, week 1 of year 2, no, but definitely trending in the wrong direction, man. That's not a good sign.
All right. Most interesting fence inactive guy for you tonight? I have mine.
I'd say Poona Ford.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't think they carry 5 defensive tackles tonight. Maybe some weeks they will, but I don't think
you might not think this guy's on the fence, but I think it'll tell us a lot about especially goal line in between the tackles and stuff like that. Latavius Murray for me. Very, very interesting, dressed or not dressed guy.
He's a numbers guy right now because I like him. I think he looked really good this summer. He's so much better in person. He is huge, man. He is so much bigger than Damian Harris. That was big for Damian Harris, that last, meaningless preseason finale, but that was important for Damian Harris.
They clearly wanted to get him that burn,
and score that.
Clearly wanted to get him that burn.
That was big. Last question. And by the way, again, for people watching, listening, you're going to be doing Sunday night tapings for Monday episodes, but this week, actually, you're going to be back right with me. We're going to tape right after the Bills game.
Back to back, baby.
Yeah, back to back.
Back to back.
Last question here for today. Realistically, okay, and let's take crippling injuries out of the equation, because obviously if Josh Allen tears his knee, there goes your season. Obviously, Stephon Diggs, a couple of those guys that we talked about. But crippling injuries aside, what to you, record-wise, for the Buffalo Bills going into the season, what do you think their realistic ceiling is? How many wins they can get to, like, if things go right? And what's your floor? Like, again, not injury count, don't account for injuries, because Josh goes down, they might be a 4-13 team.
I
What's your floor with this team?
I hate doing it, basing it entirely on record, but I get it, and I can still at least play along. The ceiling is that even with the schedule being what it is that they are every bit as good as all of the fans felt they would be with the changes that they made in personnel and scheme. All right, the ceiling is a 13-4 type team, and they just, like, Allen solidifies himself amongst the top three, because I think there's still people out there that are like that still want to play with him outside of the top three.
I agree.
All right, and I think the ceiling is, I said it earlier in the podcast that I feel like he's got the best pass catchers that he's ever had.
Yeah.
All right, and the ceiling again is he just goes out and delivers with that group, and they win 13 games, go 13-4. And if they do that, then with Kansas City looking like already one loss on the board, Cincinnati with a loss on the board, 13-4, might mean you're in Orchard
Top
Park,
seed,
all the way through. The floor is
it's
9-8, 9-8 and they miss, or a 10-7 and a miss, because a 9-8 and a miss or a 10-7 and a miss is the same thing to me. You know what I mean? Even with 10 wins, no one's going to be sitting there saying, "Oh man, they lost by a tiebreaker because of their loss," because of this, loss to, whether it's the team that beats them out or a conference loss or something like that. No one's going to sit there and look at it, even a 10-win team, all right, that misses the playoffs because of a tiebreaker and write it off. All right. Any miss of the playoffs, and it is like fucking a fire, not a fire sale. All right. But it's, there's huge changes. The roster turns over, and you ask me, what is the floor? The floor is, this is a team that, at least, if you look at the odds to the betting odds to make the playoffs, this is a team that probably still has a 20-25% chance of not making the playoffs, and that would be a fucking disaster.
Yeah, and look, I'm glad you said that, because it's not fun to say or think about, but it is not inconceivable for this team to miss the playoffs. No. It's just not, because this conference is just too damn good. Let's just give, for the sake of discussion, we'll give Miami the division, or you get the Jets, but let's just say Miami. Okay, so Miami, Cincinnati, Kansas City, Jacksonville. There's your 4 divisional winners, hypothetically. You got Baltimore, Chargers, whoever doesn't win the division between the Jets and the Ravens. The Jets and Miami, there's not a lot. And that's not even to mention a team that every year a team come out of nowhere. I was just going to say that every year a team comes out of nowhere. It might be, maybe it is Cleveland this year. Maybe Denver becomes a really good football team this year.
It's been like however many hours it's been since that game ended. I don't even know who won the Denver Raiders game, bro. I don't even know when that
Denver
game
won. It was a close game, and not very pretty either. But point being is that there's always a surprise team too. So yeah, man, it's not out of the realm to say the Bills can't miss a playoffs. And one last thing too, for people who are watching and listening, this is one thing I will like about having you on the show. So many, with all due respect to content creators and some extent myself, we care about kind of.
What's your nickname again?
Pandering Pat.
Pandering Pat.
At Buffalo Wins. Joe, he loves I love that dude. I used to think you and I argue and fought about everything all the time until I became friends with Joe. We literally fight about everything. But anyway, I feel to some extent content creators, media people too, they want to please the fans. Like, they're going to say things and have episodes geared towards making fans happy when you can. One thing I like about having you on the show is that you're not going to give a shit about that. You're not a your 18 followers on Twitter are not going to give a shit, or you don't give a shit about what people on Twitter think. I mean, you care what? Hold on, let me take that back because that's not right. You're not going to say things with the purpose of pleasing a fan base out there on social media. That's kind of what I'm getting at right now. Your thoughts are going to be your thoughts. You're not going to gear them towards what other people might think of you saying it.
I'm pretty sure that everything that you just said sounds accurate, but I've been completely fixated on the fact that my shirts come up a couple times on the video side, and I've had some belly shots. I don't know if there's a cropping feature with this right here, but yeah, that's pretty much where my head's been for the for your last.
But
no, I mean, look, I listened to what you said. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm not Debbie Downer by any stretch of the imagination. But
you're a Nate Gary type.
Okay, yeah,
it's not an insult.
No,
Nate's my guy.
No.
I don't like that a little bit too. You're in a moment kind of reactor. You know what I mean? A little bit hot headed. I certainly am. Nate is.
It doesn't. This is a terrible note to go out on, but it does not come with the same passion that it used to. Like, I can remember, right. We'll start and end with a story about the Skull Man. I can remember Scully calling me before. I remember the opener too. It was the one where Steve Christie missed the kick against the Chargers. Ryan Leaf against Flutie, or Leaf against Johnson, I think, and then Flutie had to come in. Go figure. He called me at like 3 a.m. and was just like, "What's up, man?" What's up? Like, had no idea that it was 3 o'clock in the morning. It was just because you're just so fired up, man. And I know that there's people out there who still, that it still moves that way, but I don't know, man. I'm old these days, man. I'm a little old. So I'm pumped. I'm pumped for tonight. I'm pumped to bounce right back and do another one with you and whatnot. But I can talk fairly pragmatically about how I think they're going to be. I don't have a problem doing that.
No, not for sure. And like I said, I like that a lot. And we're not. I might be pandering Pat, but we're not going to pander to the fans. We're going to call it as it is. We're Bills fans. I'm a Bills fan. I say this all the time. I don't try to hide from being a Bills fan, but at the same token, once this camera's rolling and we're taping, I try to be objective and constructively critical as necessary. You don't really see, well, you do have you got Josh Allen stuff, but like there's not Bills flags and Sabres flags hanging around. I try
your whole setup is impressive. I remember, like, on the way out tonight, I was trying to describe it to Sherry, and she actually made a pretty funny joke. She said, I can't help but keep picturing the Merv Griffin show in Kramer's fucking apartment. I said, no, it's not like that. I said, my guess is he's probably got like a little nook in the corner of a room or something like that, that makes it look more studious on the video side. But no, that wasn't giving you enough credit. You've got fancy things in here. I mean, she should be in plain view. Katy Perry should be in plain view of the viewer. And then there's C-Rob, my man Charlie Roberts, the front cover of my man Charlie Roberts' book. A lot of nice things with
little Lauren Hardy down.
Not bad. Not bad. Josh, very homery over here. This should probably move me more than it does, seeing how I'm a father of 5 kids, but I could do without this.
There's a meaning behind that.
Is there?
Yeah.
All right.
This was me and Shade, and I sound corny, but this is true.
I think it's coming
watching
back.
Each other's back. He's watching my back. I'm watching him. So that's what the Bears with their backs to each other represent. And then my guy, I got to plug this too. My man, Tyler Dunn, The Blood and Guts, Out Tight End Save Football. Great book there. But anyway, man, we're going to be back tomorrow night. Or actually tonight, I should say. Right after the Bills game, we'll recap the game and kind of set the scene going forward. This will probably be about as nice as we are to each other on this show.
I actually had an idea. Maybe I should talk to you about it, off the pod. But what if we started the podcast at like the start of the fourth quarter, and like the first 20 minutes or 30 minutes of the podcast, we're still shooting the shit about the first three quarters, but it's also, I know it's not live reactions, but it's also like, you know, it's also somewhat, you know, reactive to,
Maybe.
you know, to us. Huh?
Kind of like a
What
watch
do you think
along
about
kind
something
of
like
deal.
that?
We'll
Huh?
see.
Yes. Yes.
All right, guys, we'll be back with a new episode. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to be on every day during the week from now on. I'll be back with my man, Tone Fox, tomorrow. Talk to you then.